Hey everybody, I'm Dom, and this is Dom-Ination. So, as you guys probably couldn't tell, I love me some Legend of Zelda. And who doesn't? If you're a gamer, it's almost required by law to play at least one of these games. They're that good. The puzzles and dungeons make you think, the combat's a lot of fun, and the overworlds are big, offering players tons of opportunities to explore and find things. But the one aspect of the Zelda games that I think I appreciate a lot more than a lot of other people do are the stories. These stories are epic, filled with a sense of growth both for Link as a character, but for the players as well. In fact, with these stories as epic as they are, people sometimes wonder why they aren't filmed. Well, maybe Hollywood hasn't touched them, and after a certain movie based off a Nintendo property, I don't blame them. But that doesn't mean independent studios haven't touched them either. Just like with a lot of popular games, there are constantly people on the internet making Zelda movies. And a lot of them are just home video quality pictures with not much effort thrown into them. However, amongst the plethora of these videos, two such movies are often considered the best and well-known. The first is The Legend of Zelda, The Sage of Darkness, and the second is the movie we're looking at today, The Hero of Time. Hero of Time was made by BMB Finishes and stars David Blaine and Hannah Fierman. And just by looking at the still shots of this movie, you can tell the makers actually tried their darndest into actually making it look authentic as possible and capturing the feel of Ocarina of Time while also trying to give the movie its own identity as well. This is also one of the few fan movies that actually got a premiere and people have praised it left and right. But the question remains, is it any good? Well, let's find out. This is my review of The Hero of Time. Also, before we begin, I'm just going to put up that huge spoiler warning. Yeah, you've been warned. You don't like spoilers, go away. If you do, stay here. Other than that, let's continue. So, if you're not familiar with the Legend of Zelda series, or just haven't figured this part out yet, The Hero of Time is based on the 1998 Nintendo 64 video game titled The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time is often hailed as a masterpiece, the Citizen Kane of video games, the greatest video game ever made. So as you can imagine, adapting it is an extremely difficult thing to do, and this movie better be damn good. And it really isn't. Well, let's look at the story. The film is about Link, who for all of his life has lived in the Kokiri Forest, knowing nothing of his origin or history. This pisses Link off, constantly whining and moaning about, I want to know who I am! I want to know who I am!
It never changes. When will you tell me who I am?
It doesn't make things better that he has nightmares every night, and a weird Sharpie drawing, Mark, on his left hand. But one day, the guardian of the forest, known as the Great Deku Tree, summons Link and tells him he has to set out on a journey to save the land of Hyrule and defeat evil. So, Link sets out to Hyrule, and he eventually meets up with Princess Zelda, who tells him of the king of the Gerudo called Ganondorf. Ganondorf is trying to steal a relic known as the Triforce and rule the world with it. As it turns out, the Triforce is what the symbol on Link's hand means, showing that he is the bearer of one of the pieces, as is Zelda and also the king of Hyrule. But one day, Ganondorf actually launches an attack on Hyrule, killing the king, taking his Triforce, and forcing Zelda to go into hiding. Hoping to put a stop to the ginger meanie pants, Link heads to the Temple of Time. There, he finds the legendary Master Sword and pulls it out from its pedestal, hoping to defeat Ganondorf with it. But as Link finds out, pulling the Master Sword out of its pedestal actually sends him 7 years... 5 years in this version, into the future, showing him that he is the hero of time. But it also opened up their way to the Sacred Realm, which allowed Ganondorf to take over the world by oppressing the kingdom's 5 sages or some stupid crap. The only way to put things right is for the hero of time to free the sages from their oppressors, defeat the evil ginger Ganondorf, and save the kingdom of Hyrule from utter destruction. Anyone confused? Anyone feel like I didn't explain a whole lot? Well, that's unfortunately one of the movie's biggest flaws. Its lack of explanation for how the world works. Which, if you're a Zelda fan, fine. If you aren't, then you're going to be staring at the screen the whole time trying to make sense of what just happened. And it might even get to the point where you won't even care. That is something any movie should never do. Confuse you to the point of not caring. It's also a shame that this is a crime that this movie in particular commits, because of the fact that it is an adaptation. This movie's job is to both appeal to fans and bring in a new crowd. This didn't do either. It was too different from the game that fans are going to bitch about it, and it's going to be too confusing to bring in a new audience. Okay, so what else is it about Hero of Time that doesn't really work? Well, a lot of things. First off, from an adaptational standpoint, this movie is an utter mess. There are times that it feels like it wants to adapt the game by adding in references and fan service, but then at other times it doesn't, making changes for no other reason than to make a change in the story. Some of the changes I understand, like maybe the technology wasn't at their disposal. Although my argument was, if the technology isn't at your disposal, then don't make the friggin' movie. But then there are changes that I don't even understand, like changing the number of years Link jumped from 7 years to 5 years. It might not be that big a deal, but that's almost a deliberate screw-up. Why do it? And while on the subject, how come Link was an adult right away at the beginning of the movie? Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose of the time-traveling aspect of the Master Sword? Because in the game, it said the reason Link traveled through time was so that he could be old enough to wield the Master Sword and be the hero of time. So then why does it even transport him into the future and make him grow up anyway? Just pull the darn thing, gut Ganondorf, and be done with it! And also, there were scenes that were just pointless. For example, what was the point of the Lon Lon Ranch scene? Was it just to get Epona the horse? Or how about that shop scene? Was it just to get a bow? These things could have been cut or integrated into a different scene to make the movie flow better. Alright, so that's one. 2, the cinematography is atrocious. I get these people were amateurs at the time of making this movie, but it doesn't take a professional photographer to know how to keep a camera still. I can't tell you how many shots in this movie were extremely wobbly, and it distracted from the action. It felt like a 5-year-old was filming this half the time. I could go on, but I want to get to the biggest problem I have with this movie. And the biggest problem I have with the Hero of Time is, in fact, the Hero of Time himself, Link. In fact, oddly enough, I think the reason that Link doesn't work in this movie is the exact same reason why he does work in the video game. He has no personality and he's as boring as a piece of bread. However, in a game like Zelda, this is a genius move. By depriving Link of his personality, the player is allowed to step into his skin more and, in a sense, become the character. That way, any puzzles Link solves, you solve them as well. Any decision Link makes, you make it as well. Any battle Link faces, you face too. You see where I'm going with this? So, bottom line, it works in the game. However, what works in a video game doesn't always work in a movie. And this is one of those things. In a movie, we can't control Link's actions because now he's his own person. So all the decisions and battles are made and fought by him and him alone. But if Link is going to be his own person now, he should at least have a defining personality and identity for himself. Sadly, he doesn't. And when he does have something interesting to his character going on, the opportunity to explore it is tossed out the window, keeping him as boring as ever. But then again, none of these characters were really that interesting. Plus, he doesn't have any motivation except for finding out who he is, which he does less than halfway through the movie. And before anybody tells me that his motivation is to protect the land because it's the right thing to do, there is actually a point in this movie where he says,
"How does the fate of this land even concern me?"
Case in point. Also, one thing I didn't like in particular about this performance is that Link doesn't seem very confident, which is a trait the character always had. This guy just doesn't really know what the hell he's doing half the time. He kind of just stumbles around and then poof, plot point. Which, sure, that's how it happened in the game, but that's not how it should happen in the movie. It also doesn't help that David Blaine acts very awkwardly in a lot of the scenes he's in. In fact, a lot of the actors are kind of awkward too, now that I think about it. Hannah Fierman as Zelda, the guy who played Ganondorf, Ganondorf's sidekick guy, Malon, the list goes on and on. The only two actors in this movie that are legitimately good are the actress for Saria and the actress for the Sage of Fire. Also, some of the writing in this movie was pretty corny and lame in an attempt to make it sound all epic.
For the princess I failed to protect, and all the people slain by greed and malevolence. Kind sir, Mount, I have no quarrel.
Every blasted man, woman, child in a blade of grass will recognize my supremacy. If they resist, they will die, and they will perish within my grip.
And there are some parts where they just use bad grammar, like this scene, for example.
You going to run me through with the sheet still on the blade?
Okay, I'm tired of complaining this movie down to its core. I get it, it's a fan-made project and it's gonna be extremely flawed. But, believe it or not, I do still find enjoyment out of this movie. I mentioned before that just the aesthetics of this movie were pretty impressive, and I stand by that statement. Hyrule looks and feels like it should. Kokiri Forest has the same upbeatness. Castletown has the same busy feel. Even Death Mountain feels actually threatening. You gotta give these guys credit for picking good locations. Not just a forest or mountain did they find, but they even were able to go to a Renaissance fair to do the Castletown shots. That's unbelievable! You know what else is unbelievable? The fact that they made an original score for this movie. Sure, there were remix Zelda tunes in there, but for the most part, this was completely original. That's almost unheard of! And also the costumes were pretty neat. Okay, Ganondorf looked like a rockhopper penguin, and Zelda and Impa were a bit too plain, and the sweater Talon was wearing... lame. But the rest of them just look incredible. Also, cool thing was they actually got a legit looking horse to be Epona. And not only that, but they also made monsters to put in this movie. In a lot of Zelda fan movies, even the ones I liked, lacked all the different monsters that kind of just made Zelda feel unique and cool. This one had them, from Volvagia and the Fire Temple, to the Octorok, the Po, heck, even a Moblin. Yeah, they look fake, but come on, this was 2009, and besides, this movie still includes them. Although this does beg the question, if you can make a monster like these guys, why couldn't you just special effect Navi in this movie? Oh well, whatever. Also, one thing I like a lot, even though you can't see it a lot of time because of the terrible camera work, the fighting in this movie was really cool. Even though I criticized the Lon Lon Range scene earlier for being entirely pointless, the fight part of it was actually pretty awesome. It was one of the few times in this movie that I was actually rooting for this version of Link. And just the choreography in it is pretty neat. Sure, it's not the best, but it still looks cool. However, looks are not enough to save this movie from being bad in just completely every single other way. And while I do dislike it, I feel like I can't hate it. These people worked really hard to attempt an adaptation that's extremely hard to pull off. And just that sheer dedication and effort into this project is just why I can't hate it. That doesn't mean it's a good movie, but darn it, they tried. If you're looking for a Zelda fan project that's legitimately good, I'd say you're probably off looking somewhere else, like Sage of Darkness. The only way I'd say check this movie out is if you're really curious, but even that's a bit of a stretch. Other than that, don't watch it. There aren't enough good things about it. There's no other way to describe this movie than close, but no cigar. And that ends today's video. Thank you guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you have an idea of something you'd like to see me do in the future, comment below to let me know. Make sure to like the video if you liked it, favorite it if you loved it, and subscribe to Dom-Ination if you want more of it. Once again, I'm Dom, and this was Dom-Ination. See you guys next time!